start spending these dollars.
What,
Go ahead, Kim.
what category do you put our 3% city tax in that we're getting on marijuana?
That's an intergovernmental, and I do have a slideshow up on that, and I did receive the okay from our city attorney where I can share some data on that. I know I've always been nervous in the past because I have to sign what they call secrecy law, to where they can charge me with a felony and all that. So I've been a little nervous, but in reading the nuances, it made me a little nervous, but I can share that data with you this time.
So that's coming up.
That's
But
coming up.
that's in intergovernmental?
Yeah, that's in intergovernmental because we're receiving that money from another government agency, basically the state.
State collects it for us and gives it to us? Okay.
Yeah.
And your forecast includes the money the state took away from us in terms of liquor taxes and some of the other things that they regionally.
Marijuana taxes.
Go on.
For Measure 110.
Measure 110, but I
Yeah.
thought they also took away some of the liquor taxes as well.
Those went up this year.
Yeah.
There's been conversations, they didn't act on it.
Well, they gave the liquor store owners a bigger chunk. That happened in the last session, and that will impact our cut.
Yeah, and the great thing is I can share it with you, is the League of Oregon Cities, they actually share a state revenue, basically a revenue report that try to, with all their data, this is what you should be budgeting next year, even forecasting ahead the next few years. It's a great tool. And I utilize that, and I could pull up on screen or I could just email to you folks. You could kind of read through it, and it breaks it down. Some of it you charge by per citizen member or per population, and you can calculate that out, what you expect the next 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, because Kim and I sit on the League of Oregon Cities Taxation Committee, and they've talked quite a bit about it. OLCC is also building a $60 million distribution facility south of us, and the way they're financing that is it's going to come out of those revenues that can be distributed. So they're probably going to be
They're
some
taking the
negative-
money off the top.
They're taking the money off the top, so that there'll be some impacts there. So
Yeah.
But
And that's why I still went conservative, because the unknowns out there, what legislative law is going to be out there that they'll try to claw back a little bit of money, like they did the marijuana. They put a cap on it, and it hurt cities and counties. So,
I was going to ask another question, but I'll wait till you get to that spreadsheet that you say you're going to show us later.
is it on marijuana? Or, yeah, okay.
Never mind, I'm gonna hold off.
Okay. Already discussed property taxes, but like I said, I can share this all with the committee. Mayor, I know you requested it. I'll send it out tonight once we're done here. But those are the large buckets of revenue. Interest, I will be bringing in front of City Council, where I've developed a investment strategy where we're going to start seeing a lot more gains, and we're going to utilize all this money we have sitting here. Whether it's for even in the new URA or, the money we have sitting at the city. I've developed an investment strategy, and I'm going to share that when I come in front of City Council in June. I think it's a June 21st meeting, but you're going to see an investment strategy, kind of a rolling investment strategy to try to maximize those dollars. So that's really kind of the big revenue, big expenditure drivers of the 5-year forecast.
as part of sharing that, David, can you share the numbers you used to come up with the averages?
Yeah.
For those two as well.
Yep. Yeah, basically what I use is the actuals from audit reports, and I can notate that, and then our projections for the fiscal year we're in right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see what years you pick for that.
Yeah.
Because it's been an interesting couple of years.
Yeah.
Cover everything on.
Thank you, everyone, for indulging my curiosity on this.
No, but I can understand as a committee, you're thinking, okay, what's going on? Why have things changed? And hopefully it gave you a little bit of a clearer picture on why things have changed. I don't want to say it's a flaw. I kind of speak to Keith about this. It's not a flaw, but the flaw in the forecast is saying, I'm only going to bring in the dollars I budget, and I'm going to spend every dollar. And that has not panned out when you look back since 2018.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely gives us something to question when 2 years ago we were looking at 5-year forecasts where we had to make some tough decisions, and 2 years later it's looking pretty rosy.
No, and I could completely understand, and I'm trying to I hopefully, I eased a little bit of your concern saying, we are still being conservative. I honestly thought about, well, is there a way I could budget in or forecast in this carryover amount? No, I don't want to do that, because you want to be conservative. You want to have that cushion. You want to be able to adapt and change course, because there's going to be times throughout the year we're going to have to change course. Something new is going to come up, or
Still
so
think
we
you're-
got to have the flexibility.
I still think you're selling yourself short, because 2019 forward, if you take out the CARES money, I'll get that right this time. I mean, the most you were off was $641,000 on a $14 million budget. That's pretty close.
But my goal is to try to get as accurate as I can. So, no matter what decision you make, you have the most accurate information. That's my job.
I think it's important to note too that one of the methods that the League of Oregon Cities recommends is that 20% of ending fund balance. That's one of the best tests for solvency of the general fund, and you can see year after year the city exceeds that. So, I mean, you can tell that you guys are being fiscally conservative with what you're doing, so that's great. So, I mean, that's just one other test.
Helps with our bond rates and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if there's no other questions, before we end this evening too, I want to make sure I have all your requests down so I can get that information out to you folks tonight, or at least bring back the committee. Not to say we're going to end now, but I know you want the CARES Act dollars breakdown of, okay, what did we receive, where did it go, whether it was to all those business grants or to the community psyche program. Kind of want a breakdown of that. Correct?
On a dollar.
Just a total dollar? Okay. Okay.
And you can just note, it might be on that spreadsheet, our one-time gain, the nice gain of the $300,000 that we're getting because we shrunk the old URA, which is helping with our situation going forward. And then the anticipated bump when the old one fully closes in 2 years would be nice. You know, it's ballpark, but roughly.
Yeah. And then I know you wanted me Tim, let's run the assumptions with a little bit less aggressive growth in the property taxes.
Let's do a stress test, assuming we go into a recession for the next 2 years. Yeah.
Current next 24 months or starting in 25 or something? What 2 years are you talking?
Let's
For clarity.
No, that's a great point. Let's assume it starts not this budget year you're proposing, but the next 2 budget years.
24, 25?
Yeah. Okay. Yep, 24, 25, and 25, 26. And then you did a great job of showing us your assumptions for this, but still trying to understand the difference between the previous years. So like if you have what the assumptions were for last year's forecast, just so we can compare and contrast.
You know, one interesting thing, and I'll share that too with you, but one interesting thing is if you were to look at, let me get back to this screen. Let's just say if I were to put in, you know, because whenever you re-update your forecast, you have where you actually ended. So in 2022, we thought we were going to have, when I prepared that forecast last spring, I thought we were going to have an ending fund balance of $5.2 million. Well, we actually ended up $592,000 higher per the audit report. So we recorded, and that's the supplemental budget I brought in front of council in February, an actual about a $600,000 gain. And then where we're projecting we're going to end this year by underspending, bringing in additional revenue, that's going to be an $817,000 gain. So what is that? That's $1.4 million that's now flowing through that whole 5-year forecast. What would that have done? I just threw it in there. I was just kind of playing around the other day. What would that done into my original forecast last year? We'd actually be at a $5.7 million fund balance. This year I'm projecting 5.2. We'd be at $5.2 million fund balance. We'd be at, I'm projecting this current 4.9. It was just interesting to see that carryover dollars and the effect it has just flowing through that fund balance. So.
No, I get that,
Yeah,
and that's
no,
great. It's just I'm still in my mind, and I think the detail will help me. I'm a detail person. Is understanding why it's going up in real dollars versus going down, and the one-time shots definitely will lift you, but
Yep.
theoretically, you still decline down. So I'm trying to understand what's driving that number to go up. So,
Well, with that, I assume we're done with the 5-year forecast discussion. We can start getting into department presentations if we'd like as a committee.
I'm good.
All right. Well, we're going to start off with city council. Keith is going to come up.
Yeah, I apologize to city council that I get to be your representative. The rest of the departments will have the individuals come up. So not much to really highlight. We did go ahead and provide your performance goals and just some basic highlights from the city council. We do have the line item detail. I do want to note one of the changes. We just want to do explanations of significant changes. And materials and services was adjusted to a reduction in costs associated with consultant for city council goal setting. In the past, we had budgeted $18,000. We've changed that to $12,000 this year. Last year, we ended up a real cost of $3,000. We had a budget of about $5,000. We anticipate we can do the council goal setting for $12,000 or less. So it just made sense to go ahead and lower the actuals. And that's the only real difference between last year's and this year's budget. Questions on the councils?
given that we can meet, I'm assuming this still has monies in it for travels to DC on our lobbying efforts.
Yeah,
and all
everything
that.
else is going to be,
Couldn't do that.
yeah, it's going to be the
Yeah.
same, right? What was previously, so.
Make sure to keep that intact.
Right,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole lot of the budget we're finishing up that didn't get spent,
Yeah.
a whole lot, which is good.
No conferences.
So with city recorder, I'll invite Sylvia up. You sit right here.
Well, budget and council members, thank you for the opportunity to come forward. I left myself a couple little bullet notes so I can stay on track.
You can keep talking while I get this back to
All
her.
right. So in this year's proposed budget, I have one significant change, which is the request for a 0.5 FTE for a records management coordinator. So just a little background, back in 2018-19 in that fiscal budget, the city approved $8,500 for a records management system, which we'll refer to as TRIM. The city signed a cooperative agreement with the state, Oregon State Archive to utilize the system that they have in place, which is an Oregon Records Management System, also referred to as ORMS, and TRIM is the software. ORMS is the package in which they manage the records. We are part of that agreement with the state. ORMS is a cloud-based system, and it's in compliance with the Department of Defense Certification 5015.2. So what does that basically mean? It is a certified system. Our records are secure. Utilizing this system allows government agencies to not retain paper. So that's kind of the path that we're going in, the state and agencies, for those of us who want to be able to utilize a cloud-based system and not retain the paper. The city currently has 23 licenses within the TRIM system. We have various licenses across all city departments. We have roughly just under 100,000 records in that system currently. You'll see, I think I've referred to this before, on the website there's a web drawer. Those records are put into the system, and then we just kind of flip a switch and we say they're publicized to the public. We want to get to the point that almost all of our records here at the city are in that web drawer and are available to the public. The city disengaged, when we implemented the TRIM system, we disengaged the old records management system. So that system is no longer being used, but we still have about 18,000 records in that system. And it's just a matter of staff going in, reviewing those records, determining if those records need to be purged into the new system, or if those records have met retention. We have a process to request a destruction form, and then we destroy those records. So we have, again, about 18,000 records still in that system. In the fall of 2021, so just this last fall, Oregon State Archive informed their clients, and Oregon State Archives has about 100 clients, the city is one of them, that utilizes this ORM system, that they, because their client base has grown so much, that they are now have a system which they call Train the Trainer. So rather than coming on site, which they have done since 2019, to come on site, train those people that are license holders, they are now requesting that the client received training, and then the client train your basically our staff. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, is in my request for this FTE, this 0.5 FTE, was to basically mitigate that work that we now have to do with training, manuals, policies, procedures, just all that within this system. That's what this person, this new position potentially is going to be doing. That pretty much wraps up what I have as far as the information. I know that I don't have to tell the committee this or the public this, but our city records, our government records are vital, that we manage them per the Oregon State retention rules. Not only managing what we have, but purging what is no longer required to be maintained. It's a lot of work. And again, that's my purpose for my 0.5 FTE request. So, do I have any questions?
So you mentioned we have like 18,000 records in the older system still.
Correct.
Is there, will this new FTE help start burning those down faster? And what's our plan for like getting through that and turning that off?
So the new individual will work with staff. So the system is currently off. It just has these records
Yeah,
sitting
but you
there.
got to take them out of there and put them in the new system.
Right. So what we have is, the work that I've done within my department is to go into that system and remove the low-hanging fruit, which is the junk, the garbage, that half-drafted letter that never got signed, just that type of stuff. The meat that's still in that system requires an individual to sit with staff and say, okay, you have this type of record or that type of document. Do you have it elsewhere? If you don't, then let's get that record moved into the new system. And that's the time-consuming part, is of those 18,000 documents. Like I said, I pretty much cleaned out the low-hanging fruit. It's opening up each one and working with those areas, those different departments, to have those records purged and or moved into the new system.
How long do
Wow.
you think that will take?
With a half-time person, I'm hoping within a year. Honestly, I'm
Better
gonna.
than I was expecting.
Yeah, no, it's, the good thing is that system was a working system at the time. So staff labeled them. Those documents are in folders. Yeah, there's some documents that are just kind of still out there, but I can't say the majority. Honestly, I can't even say 50% are going to be an easy move. It's an evaluation, so I'm hopeful for a year.
Okay. I'm less concerned with how long it takes. If it takes two, it takes two. I'm just more concerned that actually we have a plan and we're burning it down, right?
Absolutely.
So, makes sense. Thank you.
I have
And-
confidence our records are in good order.
Definitely.
Then about of the new half FTE, about half of that time is covering for what the state has decided to stop doing, or less?
Well, my original request was for a full-time FTE, so now I have to look at the half-time FTE that's in the proposed budget and really look at the priority. What is the priority? Is the prior system the priority to get those records out? Right now, we have turnover in staff, so we have new staff members. I'm very pleased to see that staff members are coming, the new ones. Sylvia, can I get a license? It's like, yes, you can. So it's training and getting them rolling and then still working on the old stuff. So I'm now having to take a potential 20-hour FTE, 20-hour a week, and prioritizing.
Sylvia, what's your confidence level fighting somebody?
At a 0.5, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. You know, the market right now is tough. And then to ask for a 0.5 person to do a records coordinator position in a government agency, you know, especially somebody that has that technical, I need somebody with that technical to do that.
And you said that originally you were hoping for full-time. What happened? What was the rationale for decreasing to a part-time?
Well, in conversations with the city manager, it's right now the unknown. I know what we have in the old system. I know what we have in the new system. Can I put 3 people to work? Absolutely. I can. The one individual is not necessarily, even though that individual is going to come and be budgeted out of my department, that individual is going to be working citywide. That's with every department, every type of record across the city. So it's a capacity that I don't have right now to be able to do that citywide. So I don't know if I answered your question.
This is a capacity person. This is a question. I mean, this 0.5 is just this could be anybody that actually takes this role. You're not going to specifically hire a 0.5.
Oh,
Not going to take somebody that already exists, who has the skill, move them in, and then take that other person to pick up the slack.
No, the position is a new position. Yeah, it is a new position, yes.
New halftime position.
I'm sorry?
It's a new halftime
A
position.
new halftime position, correct. If I get a full-time person, I'd be very happy.
That was my question, I guess, is why not the full-time person? And I think I heard you say that you don't have the budget in your department. If it came from other departments,
Well, not necessarily, but that was one thing that David had mentioned, is because this individual is going to be working citywide, whether it be half-time or full-time, there are funds within the
Right,
city
right.
that could potentially pick up a percentage of that. So, yeah.
Is there any concern, you mentioned you put 3 people to work, but I think the question would be for how long, right? Because you'd burn through that backlog, you get everyone trained, and then all of a sudden you may not need 3 people anymore, right?
Correct.
So what, do we know what that is?
What-
Could you keep one person
what-
busy forever,
So
or do we know?
Yeah, so the one individual. So if you look at just the management of city records, we have retention rules that we have to follow. Some records, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, 75 years. Those records go into the system, not only do they have to go in accurately, but then they have to be purged when they've met that retention. One area that we've talked about at the council level was management of contracts. And do we need a different system, software system? Do we have to go out and invest in another system to manage our contracts? Well, once our contract is signed, it goes into the system. And again, the system is managing a record. What I'm looking at right now is, can we add data fields to those contracts to say within 6 months or 90 days, notify me when this is about to expire? So once I can confirm that the system can do that, those contracts are going to go in. Now, staff really doesn't have to go and look at a contract. How often do they look at a contract? Other than the fact that it's signed, they can now go construct whatever or utilize those services. They're not really looking at a contract. It's sitting on a shelf. Well, here the contract is going to sit in the system, but in 90 days or whatever timeline, it's going to notify them that, hey, you need to look at this contract, it's coming up. So then that piece there, we do contracts every single day. That constant flow of those documents. Can I keep one person busy? Absolutely, absolutely. Again, not just my department, this is citywide.
And I think we've had this conversation at budget before. The city manager has put forward this budget, proposed budget with us with halftime, but it's in his purview that at any time he can increase that person to one with a supplemental. I mean, you're in charge of your FTEs.
Well, in the supplemental and then
As long
what's
as you stay within budget.
what's in the budget, right?
Yeah, exactly, as
yeah.
long as
So-
it's within your budget,
But
yeah.
I think if we really see a need, then that's where you start to say, the halftime isn't going to be sufficient, right?
Yeah, I think the only difference would be getting maybe the pool of labor you might be going after with the halftime role versus a full-time role.
Might be more difficult.
Oh, no, he's gonna try
This
that.
is a great moment for me to get on my annual soapbox about this. But in my career, I've worked with hundreds of cities that when they finally went and started tracking every contract, they found that they were paying for things they didn't need. So I think making sure that we have that complete list of contracts when they come up for renewal, what we're paying for is. We're still asking for that, yep.
I sit here sometimes and I listen and I hear things like you assume that our city government runs at this other level, and you hear this kind of thing where we hunt and peck for contracts, and that's somewhat shocking.
these contracts run throughout the city. They're public works, they're planning.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And just really quick, I told Sylvia I'd help her present. You know, when it looks at her proposed budget compared to her adopted, you can see there's a 25% increase. Let's do the addition of the FTE. The other part of that is just regular step COLA increases, also health insurance. And materials and services, yes, it's gone up 17% to a total of about $40,000, but we always build in that reserve of $25,000 in case we decide or for some reason we have to hold a special election.
Yep.
I know we have a November election, it's free, but in case in May something were to happen. And then with this new position, we're gonna start needing some desktop scanners, so we budgeted in $6,000 for multiple desktop scanners just to assist her and folks that are helping her get all this information in the system.
One last quick question. When the state changed because the state entered into a contract with this company, and then we get to enjoy that software through that state contract, right?
Correct.
When they changed their policy from they're going to come out and train you to train the trainer, did we get relief on our costs for that? Because that's a reduction in services.
No, not really. No, we did not. So not really. No, we did not. But if you ask any city, including ourselves, any government agency, the level of service that the state provides and provided in the beginning, I looked at that and that was like, seriously? You provide that? You come on site, one-on-one, sitting with individuals, you train. There's a 24/7 help desk, not at the state level, but at the consultant level. And I told myself, this isn't going to last. This was too good to be true. The amount and level of service, and now they're kind of paying for it. The good thing is this is a great system. It is an awesome system. But even at the state level, their department has grown. And honestly, I don't think that they can handle capacity.
So it goes from everything to nothing. The spigot
no,
was
not
on full, and then they're turning it off.
So no, not nothing. So one of the great aspects of this system is that it will once we get records in the system will notify us when records have met retention. So we get the records in the system, we chuck the paper, we toss the paper, records in that system. When we apply a rule to a document, that document is a 10-year document, the state will notify us with this massive spreadsheet. All these records have met retention. Do you want to delete them? Yes or no? And all I have to do at the city is sign off that these records are now out of the system. So that is one thing that we don't have right now. I mean, you don't have somebody going and looking on the shelf or in a system saying, hey, this is expired, do you want to get rid of it? The system automatically does that.
That's awesome.
No, but the training element, they have however many employees currently that does the training, the help desk, all of that is at full blast on, and they're just literally turning it off.
It's not turning it off, Mayor. The individual and the services are still there, coming on site to train on site. And the amount of training they were providing is now being reduced. So I'm not saying it's completely shut off, it's just being reduced. Okay, all right, you bet.
City manager, so one of the things that has changed is the goals. I think this is something I'd like to work with the council on, but I did decide to put 3 that I thought were pertinent to what I thought would be good goals going forward. I think goals are meaningful if they have a measurable that is meaningful. So I'd like to have some more conversations, but just wanted to highlight enhanced community outreach, communicate and update adopted deliverables of the city council goals, and then the monthly health and wellness programs for internal and external stakeholders. And then with my budget, just a couple things with personnel services. I do serve as the agency manager for the 2 URAs, so I'm able to allocate some of my time to that. So that's a reduction in personnel services. And then for materials and services, you'll see an increase, and that's because next session is a long session, and so we want to account for the lobbying which comes from that. So That's basically the differences in the city manager's budget. Happy to answer any questions.
I'm interested to learn more about those goals. But probably not at this time.
No, I'd like to have a conversation. That would be great.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
My goals are pretty similar to what they've been in previous years, continuing to improve the law clerk program. I think we're on our 6th law clerk right now, our legal intern. Assist with successful completion of council priority projects and continue to review ordinances and housekeeping updates. You can see my performance measures there. The one kind of blip in there is that we didn't have a full year legal intern in fiscal year 21-22. That was due to some COVID-related complications, but hope to return to that in the future. Just to touch basically on the two highlighted significant changes here, personnel services, that's based on the compensation for the city attorney position that's determined by city council. Also, I'm assuming includes the COLA and the PERS changes that are part of the city manager's proposed budget. And then for materials and services, we budget for outside legal services each year. Last fiscal year, I budgeted assuming that we would do the labor negotiations entirely within this current fiscal year. They're going to cross fiscal years instead, is my expectation now. So assuming that that will cross over into next year, that's why it's a decrease, because we're not budgeting for an entire round of labor negotiations with both unions. However, I would expect that in subsequent years, the number will decrease even further, as we will hopefully not ever again be negotiating with both unions at the same time in one fiscal year.
And Josh, if you ever do work supporting one of our URAs, your actual time is billed to the URA, or is it some other mechanism in which?
It's a great question. We have not, to my knowledge, allocated city attorney time to URA.
We have not, but we could do it in the time system very
Yeah.
easily.
It's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, we do still allocate out, I guess, a percentage of admin overhead.
Right,
To-
so that's,
to-
right,
yeah,
right, so
that
that's
top
one,
line.
so is it do we do it as a percentage of overall?
So basically roughly about 26%, 29% of his budget is allocated out to all the departments, and it's really based on overall budget. So a little bit of it goes to the original URA, a little bit more eventually as that TIF revenue builds up in the 2021 URA, more will get allocated out there too.
Just wanted to be clear so people know that, yeah, that we get general services, city hall services get compensated for in one way or another when we get to the URA portion, but.
Right. We haven't done it on a time basis, but we could certainly look at that.
Whatever is the most equitable and smart way of doing it, I don't care.
Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. I'm assuming this includes for outside attorneys in very specific areas where we need experts, like
Yes.
in land use and police or whatever.
It does include all of the expected outside legal services, whether it be land use, or I have a category for miscellaneous outside expertise, because you never know what issue is going to come up. Condemnation, for example, came up last year. Labor is definitely included in there, yes. I don't believe that police outside legal services is in this budget. This is what I had proposed, which didn't include that.
And for those that might be listening at home, we're not worried about people suing us all the time, so we need more attorneys around. But we do have areas where we have, like in land use, where some of the land use stuff that our planning commission deals with can get really in the weeds with the legal issues, and we sometimes need that expertise.
Or just the extra time. I mean, Josh only has so many hours a day, so.
That's definitely true.
And there was $25,000, but it was actually, the one thing is it was included in the police budget, even though he would be using that. It's just because we do not allocate out the police budget. That's a specified service. It's for the police department. police expenditures stay within the police budget, and they don't get allocated out to other departments. That's 100% general funded service.
That's not accurate, because be it internal or external legal services, needs to be, I mean, part of Josh is not in the police budget then.
No, but the bill,
So, but to be clear, Josh could be doing, in this case, police budget, police legal services, or an outsider could be doing police legal services. So then, is part of Josh in the police budget, or is all of the legal services in Josh's budget? It's one or the other.
Shall be in the legal.
So,
yeah, and I heard about that, and it's an easy change, but
so,
I can't
one of,
review this
one,
budget at the last second.
Yeah, I think that's important because, you know, with our charter and for, again, for people out in the audience, the attorney and the city manager report to the council separately. It's part of our checks and balances, and Josh's responsibility is protecting the city from litigation and all things legal. So I think it makes more sense to have it his budget and then allocate the other way.
Yeah, the city attorney should be managing
Yeah.
all legal budget, in my opinion.
Yes, I'll just have to figure out a way it doesn't get allocated out to the water department, the broadband fund, the sewer fund, the sanitary fund, those costs, because his department's allocated out to all those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll figure out some kind of accounting mechanism. I was trying to make this easy to eliminate journal entries, but.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you, Josh.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Budget Committee and council members. Information technology. Few goals here this year, mainly around equipment replacement projects. Had several projects over the last couple of years, actually, that got delayed due to just supplier shortages, and some of those materials are starting to come in this year, namely the big one we've been trying to do for the past year is a phone system upgrade. So that's a big one we're going to get. We finally got phones a couple months ago, or about a month ago. We've got Public Works field laptops. That's just on a regular replacement cycle. We have a whole schedule for all of the assets, the infrastructure that IT department manages. Those are due for replacement. We have network switches. That's kind of what makes up the city's network throughout all of the buildings. We purchased those in 2006 when we built this building, so they're surely out of date and ready for replacement. I feel like this is going to be a line item every year, cyber security improvements and disaster recovery. That'll be something that we always will budget for as threats emerge each year. The way we protect them changes each time, so we're on top of that, you know, as best we can, and we're trying to adapt when new threats come up and what new software we might need to kind of help protect those things. So we've got some money in there for that. And then a council goal this year is a redesign of the city website. So we've got some money set aside to do that, and we'll go through that process. Probably it'll be a long process to make sure we get citizen engagement kind of really nailed down on that. So budget-wise, we were short. Our actuals came in a little bit, quite a bit lower last year. I guess that's 2 years ago. That was primarily due to COVID. With everybody working remote and capital projects, or the projects we had set aside for capital projects didn't get done. That's the gap there. This year we're fully staffed, plan on catching up with a lot of those projects. So that's where the increase comes. Yeah, I think with that, any questions for me?
I had one. Is the financial software maintained by IT, or is that in the finance budget?
The maintenance is in the IT budget.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I know getting like a new financial software has been discussed previously at budget meetings. Is that still something that the city is planning on doing, or? Oh, sorry. I'll wait till the finance.
Remember?
I'll explain the
I'm just looking out
increase
for
in my
you.
budget.
Usually what happens is the maintenance and support kind of comes out of the IT department, but the capital expenditures for large software packages come out of the departments.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
You can come up, but can I just quickly go back to the city attorney? Josh, you don't need to come up, because
gone anyways.
Oh, goodbye, Josh. Because I felt David was frustrated, so I kind of want to understand then, since if we have legal services specifically for police, how do our legal services when we're like negotiating a SPOA contract get? I mean, that's also for police, or if we have an issue, isn't it kind of the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, well, yes, and I know the allocated cost methodology needs to be revamped here.
Okay.
That's on one of my lists to do. But I know when you start looking at departments and you start having the conversations of allocated costs, there's some departments, well, these costs just keep going up and up. Of course, the overhead keeps going up. But really, I've been trying to pull out, okay, if this is police-related, if you buy police capital expenditures, whether it's radios, make sure it's recorded in their budget, because, for example, if IT were to purchase it, then it's going to allocate it out to all those enterprise funds, which they shouldn't be paying for that. It should just be general funded. And so that's why, yes, it came to my attention after the fact, and I just didn't have time to redo this.
No, I totally get that. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it.
I included where any kind of outside counts or legal service that we use, we could just charge the bill there, but it'd still be all under the city attorney control of. It would just be when he goes to pay the bill, signs off on the bill, it's just being charged to the police budget.
And they could monitor that budget, I guess, but.
That doesn't really bother me that much personally.
I think the key things is Josh's team is signing off on expenses, and Josh's team is determining the budget based on asks that are coming from the departments during the budget cycle. That needs to stay clearly in his purview.
And I have no problem moving over there. We could figure out some kind of methodology to remove some expenditures so they don't get allocated out.
It does feel like maybe
I'm not let you do your job.
We'll let you play with that.
Good evening, counselors and budget committee. Good to be here. So recruitment is definitely the topic for HR these days, and especially here at the city of Sherwood. So I did put together some different metrics because a lot of them were not being tracked prior. So developing an annual wellness program is obviously a very important component. Working with various departments, the city manager, making sure that we have employee engagement across the board. So we'll be coming up with a calendar that will have monthly lunch and learns and different engagement opportunities for our employees. An employee handbook also we need to update clearly to make it more modern. There's a lot of sections within the employee handbook that we'll be bringing before council. And then also presenting total compensation reward statements. And I have come up with a spreadsheet to engage when we're making offers to new employees, to show them what the cost of the city is and shows them their entire total compensation package. And so that sometimes seals the deal in getting employees to come on board, so another attraction. But also making sure that all of our employees have that as well, to just reinforce what they are receiving on behalf of the city. Also negotiating the 2 union contracts, as Josh pointed out. And then also continuing to create more online training, mandatory training across the board, department-specific training. My metrics, as you'll see, recruitment is top of mind. So making sure that we're utilizing social media and specific job boards to make sure that we get enough outreach on all of our positions is really critical. So you'll see those numbers climb up for recruitments. It's the great resignation, as people say. So it's definitely a competitive market, as you all know.
Question, so define that metric, recruitments. So But looking back to 2021, we had 26 recruitments, 8 new hires. What does recruitments mean exactly?
That means that we went out and we advertised for a position, whether it was filled or not.
So we might have done, in that case, we might have done a recruitment 3 times for the same position.
Correct.
How do you have
Correct.
a .75 recruitment?
Recruitment's 53.75. I was doing an average over the last 2 fiscal years, and yeah,
Gotcha.
because we also have some half-time positions and 3/4. Yeah.
And I was just going to assist Rebecca, since she's kind of new to this process, presenting her budget. You know, her increase in personnel services last year during the budget committee meetings, we approved a half-time position for her department. And it's taken quite a bit of time to get her on board. So now she could finally actually get a staff member on board, and
Yeah, today was her first day, so
awesome.
she's running with it right away. So just, you know, the amount of requests of employees, recruitments, leaves, FMLA, pay equity, there's so many projects to tackle. So I was grateful for even the half-time position. So, yes.
And really, in our materials and services budget, I know there's an outside consultant used for CIS when we're negotiating property insurance, auto insurance. And I just want to note for the committee, you know, we're going to see general and auto liability insurance increase of 15%, and property insurance up to 20%. Now, CIS recommended we budgeted that, but they think it might come in a few percentage points lower. But they said, we recommend you at least budget there, though. So that's really the reason for the increase there, because it's about, let's say, it's about 275, 280,000 of that budget is for insurance in there.
Oh, it's right. Anybody that's paid their insurance bill in the last few months of whatever bucket, you know, personal insurance or business insurance, it's like sticker shock.
Absolutely love the fact that you're getting these onboarding classes and continuing training classes rolling and available. It's a wonderful thing.
How many open positions do you have right now?
Currently, I have 4 open positions, and I have probably about 12 all in different stages. So some of those are duplicate positions, but yes, it's busy. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so finance. Some of our goals, just increase passive revenues through sound investments. Like I said, I'm going to bring in front of City Council in June, kind of this investment policy. Just with the approval of the annual investment policy, just kind of show you what I started doing. Just try to bring more in that interest revenue. Let's utilize the dollars instead of earning that small 0.5% to 0.75% in the LGIP. Yes, we're still researching and analyzing options for a new financial ERP system. And during council goal setting session, we actually determined that's going to be more of a mid 2 to 3 year term goal versus a short term goal. You know, we offer 2 big services when it comes to the finance, when it comes to the city. You know, we have to prepare an annual audit and we have to prepare these annual budgets. And I know this year we added a new budget with that new URA. When you look at my budget as a whole, you might look at personal services went down. Why did it go down? Well, there's going to be a significant amount of my time now, just for this 1 year, it's going to be allocated to that original or old URA, because, you know, I'm going to have to work with bond counsel. I'm going to have to work with some of these debt agencies, because we're going to be looking at defeasing this debt. I'm going to have to work with the city attorney, because, you know, trying to wrap up this plan and so forth. Materials and services have gone down significantly because originally we had budgeted $200,000 to start researching a new ERP system. We determined we have so much going on, let's move that to a midterm goal. I'm not spending those proceeds, but if you were to take $200,000 off of that, you'd say, well, your budget still went down in materials and services, David. Why is that? Because I'm getting rid of some of these systems that we don't use. And you might be thinking in your head, stories.
Stories. Are we getting rid of stories?
Yes.
Okay, never
Yeah,
were
so
you.
we're going to get rid of some systems, and I'm learning some of these systems that have been utilized for specific purposes. I've been able just to create it in a workflow through an Excel document. So It saves $8,000-9,000 just to put it in Excel, so. But that's pretty much my budget. Any questions? I'm not, it's pretty much status quo. It's just, yes, there's a huge shift, but I'm not adding any new personnel. I'm not requesting really any new materials and services expenditures.
I'll say I love that you put this council goals next to your what category they fall into. I noticed that through some of the other departments. Appreciate that.
Municipal court, since they fall under me, just, a few of their goals, just continue, they are working more of a hybrid model, staff communication, working remotely, supporting each other, still trying to find ways to streamline and find workflow efficiencies. They process a significant amount of traffic violations. We're projected to be up to 21,000 and at the end of this fiscal year and 22,000 at the end of next fiscal year. And when you look at total department revenue, like I said, originally I had budgeted, I had forecasted, well, we're going to bring in about $2.185 million. That's actually going to come in about $2.3 million this fiscal year. So I did a modest increase. Really, I don't want to say, if you look at the comparison from last year's adopted budget, yeah, it looks like 7.32% increase, but where I'm projecting us to end, you're talking about a $45,000 increase, and those cameras aren't even on yet, so. I was very conservative. Their personnel costs, it's really just, they're fully staffed now, and it's really just step increases, COLAs, and insurance. And then the materials and services, we do have the red light photo services that's charged out of that budget line. Last year, we saw a little bit of a dip in the budget because we did have some cameras down. Those are some of those features are going back online, thus we'll be paying that bill now, so.
With the construction project, is it anticipated that they have to go, that they'll go back down again, or?
Yes, I projected them out in the long-term forecast where, where I'm projecting a little bit of spike, a little bit of an increase, just because the cameras are actually going to get turned on to where actually we can generate a little bit of revenue now. And then I brought it back down, and then once those 5 lanes opened, I brought it back up, because a little bit, very conservatively, I think it was like 2%, because now you're going to have 5 lanes racing through there, and it will be interesting to see, 5 lanes trying to beat the light. We don't know.
So David, I'm guessing too, because, you talk about, when you talk about departmental revenue, that's mainly the revenues we get from fines and et cetera, from not only the cameras, but also from the reactive work that our police are doing, or proactive work. Is this expenses, though, is just the court expense? It doesn't include all the police time to review those tickets and that side of it. So when you look at and I'm saying this more for the public, when you look at those two numbers, it's actually a lot closer to the revenue we get and the expenses we incur to operate those cameras. I just don't want people walking away thinking we're making $1 billion a year.
No, because I mean,
cameras.
Ty can speak to it when he comes up here soon, that I think there's a full-time FTE that's looking at these, and then also we bring a gentleman over here, stands in the courtroom and so forth. So yeah, we do allocate police staff time to whether it's reviewing the tickets or whether it's being here at City Hall.
Gotcha.
And for clarity, the revenue we recognize is our portion of the revenue, because a bunch of revenue gets sent off to the state.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of it gets sent off to the state, yeah.
Only a slice of every ticket stays with the city.
What percentage is that? I didn't, astronomical? I mean,
The state takes a lot more than you think. I don't know.
60, 75?
I can get that for you, but
It's not important, it's
yeah.
more just, it's not important, but that's.
It's more than half of
Yeah.
Some goes to the state, some goes to the county, but we get it, I assume it's about a third. We get somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, I'm just thinking, what was it last month, like 60,000, 80,000 sent off? Yeah, it's a significant portion.
Every ticket's kind of different.
Yeah.
Everyone I've gotten has been different too, so.
And that model for
Thank you for
determining
supporting
this
your city and
distribution is
state.
complex in itself. It's not easy.
Everybody wants their slice.
They need their
I'll allow Julia, was anybody going to join you? Because I can scoot over or just you.
I don't think so, but Erica is here if there are questions. I can't, which hopefully there aren't, but.
I'm good.
She's here to see how it's done. So planning, just as a reminder, community development is planning, engineering, building, and then sort of CDD management. And we all work together and sort of interflow. Planning, in addition to just the normal current planning projects that we see day to day, their goals, the things that they're planning on working on this fiscal year, this coming up fiscal year, is continuing to implement the comprehensive plan, especially those related to state mandates, and then also adopting the Sherwood West concept plan relook. They're going to be finishing that up towards the end of this calendar year. I go down. Thank you. The big difference between last year and this year in planning's revenue is the grant for the Sherwood West relook. We'll be using a little bit of that this fiscal year, but not as much as we had anticipated last year, and certainly not as much as we will be spending this year. So slight reduction. The charges for services are roughly the same. It's down a little bit, but not significantly so. And then materials and services, same thing. That's related to the consultants that are working on the Sherwood West relook plan. Any questions on planning? Okay. Building, their goals are pretty straightforward. They just process building permits and inspections and final occupancy in a timely manner. And so their goal is to continue doing that this next fiscal year. We've had a lot of, as I think you've seen, significant, or maybe not seen quite yet, significant building permits in the building department over this current fiscal year. Actually, the adopted budget was $1.5 million. We've actually brought in more than that, or projecting to bring in even more than that. And when you look at past years, it's significantly more than we've brought in over the past years. And that's primarily because of the development that we're seeing in the industrial areas in the Tonkin employment area and along Tualatin Sherwood Road. We're not seeing that slow down significantly. So we have a reduction in revenue, but still pretty significant compared to several years ago. We've got projects that have gone through the planning process, so we're fairly certain that they're going to be submitting building permits. And so that's why we feel comfortable making such a bold, I guess, revenue assumption for the building department. And then the personnel services is down. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, last year, the city approved a commercial plans examiner. Did I get that right?
Yes, you said
Commercial
right.
plans examiner. We've been unable to fill that. I think it would be important, maybe next year to go back out on the market, because a significant amount of that money that we bring in the door, 65%, gets sent down to Salem. And so if we were able to hire for this position, it will pay for itself for 3 to 5 years just with a few large projects. And so that's why you see materials and services up, personnel services down. But if we were to hire someone, maybe we get someone in here 3 to 6 months. Well, I'm going to be shifting personnel services down or up and reducing that materials and services money that would have went out the door.
So it's safe to say that while we've not been successful in finding an in-house person, it is still a goal to try.
Rebecca and I had that conversation today or yesterday. Yeah, we've had the conversation. It's when we talk about recruitment, to me, it's the top priority recruitment in terms of trying to find a solution because of the value.
Yeah, and it's a hard position to fill because of the certifications that are required. Our building official is not certified to be a commercial plans examiner. There aren't that. I mean, it's a hard position. It's an aging position, frankly, and so it's a little hard to find qualified people. We did go out. That's one of the recruitments that Rebecca reported on. We did interview several people over a rolling period of time, and just weren't finding anybody that we felt comfortable with. And we sort of stopped when we got the building permits in that we had hoped would pay for that position. But like I said, we're still seeing a lot of stuff. So I think that going back out and trying again is a very good idea. We have an on-call, and that's why the materials and services remains high. We've got an on-call firm that does very timely and thorough reviews, which is great. It's actually helped us meet some of our economic development goals because we've been able to provide really quick and responsive permit reviews when they needed it. And we were able to seal some deals that way. So it's a great firm. And we would retain that firm even if we hire somebody on in staff, just for the events. If that person is inundated, we don't want to not be able to provide that same quality of service that we're able to provide right now.
Julia?
Yes.
Quick question. On the proposed revenue, how much of that is for building permits for housing units?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head what the percentage is. There is, we do have a assumption for quite a few building permits for residential, but there's also a lot of industrial development that we're anticipating. Building permits are based on a percentage of the value of the improvement. And so that's one of the reasons why it's still pretty high, because we're assuming quite a bit of that industrial development.
I was just curious what your projections are for new housing unit production next year.
So previous bid 125.
125?
Family and 25.
Did I miss that?
Thanks. Any other questions on building?
I'm colorblind.
So I'm not going to go through all the engineering goals. Again, building, planning, engineering, they do the private development day-to-day, reviewing permits. Engineering also does the capital improvements. So some of this is related to those goals. Our city engineer is providing a lot of support and assistance on the traffic safety committee, as well as working on sanitary sewer projects throughout in Brookman and Rock Creek, and then also our Oregon Street design they're working on. They've got a lot of projects going on. As far as revenue, the nice thing about building and engineering is we kind of have an idea of what's coming, as unlike planning where we don't know what's happening down the pike necessarily. But because of the projects that we have going on in the Brookman area and the Tonkin Employment area, we're projecting revenue increases because of the amount of public infrastructure being proposed. And their revenue also is based on a percentage of the value of the improvement. So that's where that increase is from. Materials and services is up because of the amount of work that they're doing in private development, as well as all the other capital projects that they're doing. We needed to budget for some more on-call services for them so that it would support them in the private development piece. And so a big chunk of that is for in the event that we need to have some on-call folks back support the engineering staff in the private development review, and also transportation on-call services just in the course of their the land use reviews. Do you want to explain the cost allocation?
Yeah, and just add out, they're working on so many capital projects, whether it's in the new URA or assisting in some of the other funds, whether it's, I don't want to say general construction fund, but you got the water capital fund, the sewer capital, and the storm capital. Just with the amount of large projects we have going on, you could see, yeah, their personnel services went down, but their cost allocation went up because they're allocating their time out for all this time they're working on all these larger projects. So when we get to the 2021 URA budget, there's two funds we have for that. One of it is the capital fund, and there's some engineering time recorded in there. So they're not adding, they're not reducing positions. It's the way we allocate out their costs.
And last, but hopefully not least, the CDD management is sort of, in my mind, the catch-all for everything that isn't planning, building, or engineering. So a lot of the code compliance officers' time may be charged to my fund because it doesn't fit anywhere else. And certainly the economic development manager's time will fall there, as well as staff that are supporting the economic development manager. They might charge their time to my fund as well. So the revenue is down because the only revenue that we had was a grant that we will be done with. So we're not going to have that revenue coming in anymore. And then personnel services is up in part because of just where and how staff are allocating their time to the CDD management department. Any questions about CDD management?
I have a question. I don't know if this is the right time for it, but it might be because it involves land. So I'll ask it. But I think it was about this time last year we authorized the city manager to go out and look for land. If parcels become available for parks or whatever, because of the market, you have to jump on those quickly. So we wanted to eliminate some bureaucracy so the city manager didn't have to come to us every time an opportunity popped up. And I know we purchased one property already off Roy Rogers. How is that in the budget? How are those purchases funding, or we're just using our reserves and ARPA fund to fund those when those properties?
It would really be dependent on the property itself, what it would qualify for, what it would qualify for SDCs or whatever, mechanisms we can use to pay for it. So internally, if we're looking at properties, that's one of the decision points we're looking at is what funding sources could we use, or how could we fund this purchase of this property. So I don't want to say too much more than that, but I think that sort of covers what the general plan is. And the council did just reauthorize that approval, I think in the last council meeting, if not 2 council meetings ago. So
Property moves so fast if you don't jump on it.
And I'll also add that we do have some money under materials and services that isn't really earmarked for anything specific, but it gives us that flexibility for things like appraisals or special reports or projects that we might need to support the things that economic development is doing.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say these little spreadsheets right here are very helpful. I know since I've been on council, we usually had all that extra budget detail that I guess
We still do.
no, we didn't get it this year.
Oh.
But this is so much more clear and easier than reading the 3 or 4 pages on community. Anyways.
Something I added to this, and you'll see, I know when Joe was here, we just did it for the general fund. Well, now I've added all the funds behind that. So it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
the whole document. We're just going to walk through it all.
Yeah, this
on the
is just
spreadsheet.
a better snapshot of it than all the detail.
Still working on the URA, so that one might be a little shaky when we get there. All right.
Thanks, Julian.
Got your
No, you're
glasses,
blind.
Ty?
Without them.
I'm old.
Pretty much. Jeez. Good evening, everybody. How are you? Okay, the police budget, 2022-23 goals. As you can see, some of these are carryovers just because of some of obviously the impact of COVID and our inability to get out and be engaged within the community. You can see that, our succession planning is still in place. We're going to hopefully get our Citizens Community Academy back up and running this summer as well. And then we've already been actively doing it, but the Coffee with the Cop or the Coffee with the Force, we have Fishing with the Cop coming up. A lot of those things that we're going to be out and be a part of again as things have opened up for us. So those are a lot of our generalized goals. But when you look at our personnel, one of the things that we're asking for this year is we currently have a half-time CSO evidence tech, and that is a person that oversees our entire evidence plus our community service issues that arise. And part of his role is to be here in court. So he's allocated at least 8 hours a week in court, along with all his other requirements that are asked of him, and to oversee an evidence system that has had some legislative impacts as far as how evidence is processed through the state. The number of evidence pieces that come through our city right now are pretty overwhelming and daunting, and that includes all our body-worn camera, which takes up a considerable amount of time nowadays. So what I've asked for is to split that so that you have a full-time CSO and a full-time evidence tech that can now focus on evidence and processing all of those pieces and making sure that we're following legislation and that we're following all the needs of the evidence. Most importantly is that we have a backlog, and we have, I think we had an analysis done where we're about 2.5 years behind in dispositions. So we have evidence that's sitting in our lockers that we could have gotten rid of long ago that we need to. We need to make room for, unfortunately, more evidence.
You don't have the system where the state sends you an email like Celia does? So you can get rid of all this?
No, that would be nice. It's all manual. So that'll be something that hopefully we will, I don't know if we'll ever get ahead of it, but at least we'll keep up, and that will be a benefit for us. On the CSO component, like I said, we have that 8-hour allocated time here in the courts. That could increase. We were running Monday and Friday courts. We're just at Fridays right now. And, you know, depending on when the red light or the cameras get back up and going again, we could be back to a Monday, Friday kind of need for that person. So the other important piece for this person is they can help with red flags. They can issue citations and review that, eliminating officers from sitting behind a screen and monitoring some of those things. They can also assist on traffic stops. One of the things and the challenges is we have are obviously police officers. And so the CSO as a full-time person can be out there augmenting a lot of the things that a police officer is having to do. They can take cold reports, lobby contacts, some of those things that will free up more time for our officers out there. So that was that ask in this year's budget as far as personnel goes. Aside from that, we're also asking for a couple of overhires, and I think David talked about how that CSO position evidence split won't take effect until 1/1 of 23. What we're trying to do is offset that money and allocate it and put it towards 2 overhires. Why we're asking for 2 overhires is because we actually know in 2023 we're going to have 4 officers retiring. I do know that at the beginning of 23, the projected timeline of when they'll be gone. The other 2 will be at the end of the year. So I'm trying to get ahead. If you follow law enforcement, you know the challenges of us getting up and going. It's nice to say that we're, quote, fully staffed, but we're not fully functional right now. We just brought on 4 officers in the last 2 month. 3 of them won't see the academy until August and September, so we won't see them on the road until sometime in 2023. So I'm trying to get ahead of that because I do know of people that are leaving. So I'm hoping to.
Nowhere in this document, nowhere in the message from the city manager does it talk about overhires that I see. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm saying it's not I don't see it in this document. I don't see it in the detail summary that.
In the proposed budget that we saw.
I haven't turned to the police section of the budget, but it's not in the summary from the city manager report. So please put it in there. Unless the collective disagrees with that idea.
I think it's a great idea, overhire. I hadn't heard it referred to that way, but I mean, you can always assume a certain amount of attrition. And when you have such long lead times to train people, even when you're fully staffed, you should be recruiting because you know it's coming. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's going to be an ongoing thing for us for probably years to come. We're fishing out of puddles now for people getting in law enforcement. So anytime we can take the opportunity to hire them and get them up and ahead.
You're way ahead of our neighbors. You're doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're doing a
it's
shout out to everybody involved.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. Apologize for that. It's been something that's been on my mind, trying to get ahead. Just obviously, it's always nice when you know somebody's leaving to plan for it. So that's one of. I'm sorry.
Did we budget these overhires for a full year or half a year or? Half a year?
The 2 overhires we did for half a year.
So basically they equal 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Aside from that, we're not looking for additional personnel. And just, I mean, as much as I would like to, it's just, we just need to get up and functioning at full capacity as best we can at this point, so.
A couple of budgets ago, we budgeted for a second school resource officer. Do we have 2 resource officers?
So we did hire that person. One of the things that we're trying to do right now is reallocate a body to the schools, probably in a supervisory role, but I can't do anything right now because I can't move anybody. I literally do not have full staff on all my shifts, so.
I get that.
So to answer your question, yes, there is a body allocated for that second SRO, but until I can get these new hires through the academy and on the road, and once I do, I'll probably be able to make that adjustment January, February of 2023. Yeah.
Well, it was my understanding, even though we had it two budget cycles ago or whatever it was, SRO, it was contingent upon the school district working with us to have that SRO. So we had gotten notification from them at one point for no additional SROs, so we just filled that as, didn't we just fill it for patrol at the time?
We did, but I still feel it's important. I feel I have an opportunity to put somebody in there in a supervisory role that can oversee it, be engaged, and be a part of it. Not necessarily under the school umbrella, but somebody that's a resource and accessible and just being creative.
Okay, yeah, that's
Value
great.
of that program has been
Yeah.
proven over and over again this year.
Yes.
Previous years. Yeah.
So the school's on board with the second SRO?
It's not going to be necessarily an SRO within the school. It'll be a supervisory role that will engage and be active and participate, but not necessarily assigned to a school until we have further discussions down the road. But I do need a body there available that can be reached, that can be contacted, that can interact, and not necessarily have to be assigned to a school.
Gotcha.
Does the school pay any part of the SRO, or that's just a free service we offer?
Half.
They pay half, okay.
Of the
This-
first
this
one.
position-
Of the second one, we fully funded ourselves.
Sorry.
Got it.
Sorry.
That's all right. The second one you're talking about is you're going to control, not the schools, and they're not going to pay for that.
Correct. Yeah. So on this second slide, you can see that personnel services obviously are up just because of all the costs you've heard about COLA, this added additional body, the part-time overhire, and then materials and services is one of the challenges. It's a double-edged sword for us in law enforcement because we're technology-driven. I mean, everything you see here has a cost to it and continues to rise. From 5% to 7.5 was our latest increase with WACA, our dispatch for this year.
How much?
7.5. Last year we were down, so it kind of ebbs and flows. Just, it depends, but that's where we were for this coming year.
Gotta get the leadership. All the groups kind of realign WACA, I think. I mean, I serve on the WACA Budget Committee along with Chief, and it's just, I'll just say it's interesting. I think cities overpay in the overall balance, but it's like anything else, it's a negotiation struggle to achieve something that we all agree on.
And one thing I wanted to touch on, it was this, the legal services that may or may not be in here.
No, it's in there. It's just, by the time I could make the change, I'd have to revamp the whole document.
Part of materials and services.
Yeah, and just, and I know Councilor Rosner talked about it. It's not about we're being sued, but it's about the law enforcement landscape nationally and where things are at. Just so you are aware, we had 25 new police reform bills introduced in 2022. They all have, I guess, some intended purpose, but I think we always miss the unintended consequences that we need to be vigilant about and making sure that we have the experts out there helping us and guiding us. If nothing else, just giving us direction. I know our city attorney's bandwidth is stretched, and so when I have the ability to go out and contact somebody or get an idea or get some direction, I think it's very valuable in today's climate for us to be proactive in that arena. So that was the driving force behind that, and I wasn't sure that that was in there. But I wanted to give a little bit more explanation as to what that was for.
But always through the city attorney.
Yes, yeah, it's always important to bring them into the loop if we have to make policy changes.
When you engage the attorney, you would involve the city attorney.
Yes.
Great. Yep, it's clearly important. When you have past bills and even pending bills, it's important to understand what that impact is and for everybody. Awesome.
There's a lot of policy changes this year.
I have one quick question. For your capital outlay, I see it's 0. For your fleet replacement, is that maintained in Public Works? Okay.
Yeah.
You basically, you'll see when we get to the fleet budget, we purchase vehicles, the ones that are purchased for say broadband or water, you'll see an allocated cost because they're just basically charging that fund, they're reimbursing, but fleet maintains the fleet.
Got it. And then is that the same for the radios and those replacement costs, or?
I know with it, I'll let you talk about your radios.
No, that's all within ours. I mean, so we just switched over to digital here in the last, literally 6 months ago. But this little gym right here is $6,000. And so we're trying to, it was a big chunk for us just to purchase this initially, and now we just got to continually to add these on as we bring on additional officers and cars. I mean, hopefully we can usually transfer them over, but did I answer your question?
Yeah, so is that just built in the materials and
Yes,
services?
yes.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
I guess you're supposed to say fleet and equipment.
Got it.
They do purchase some, I know they purchase some radios for broadband, and that's purchased out of the fleet, so, yeah.
Is there some dollar amount that differentiates between materials and services and capital outlay on an item, like a $6,000 radio?
5,000 is a capitalization policy.
Okay.
So it's weird when you could buy 20 computers and it could cost, I'd say $20,000, but each one of those computers are for $1,000. You don't capitalize them.
Yeah.
But our capitalization policy is 5,000.
Didn't we determine that about 4 years ago?
Sounds familiar.
Allocation of a certain amount that they didn't even have to have some
Yeah, but it's a big dollar amount. If the city has to buy a big street sweeper, for instance, that goes before city council to adopt. So there's a dollar amount. I think it's $100,000. Something like that.
I thought that's where we determined the 5,000 also.
Yeah, and I don't recall exactly, but we might have determined that's when it becomes capitalized.
But
That's usually a typical capitalization policy. You see most entities, but then you have some that are higher, but they have the very large assets.
That's for the individual asset. It wouldn't, if you bought 30 PCs, you wouldn't necessarily capitalize
Right.
that invoice, right?
Great work.
Any other? You good? Okay.
You could, I just.
World language material circulation.
No, go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Budget Committee members. So I'm here to represent the library. I wanted to just speak briefly about our 2022 to 2023 goals. Our biggest one, of course, is to restore services. We've been mostly restored for open hours. We opened again in April 2021. We got back up to full hours in August of this last year. But we're still bringing in-person programs back. We've started that. We have a number of things that have been on pause. The facility master plan that was completed pre-pandemic has been on hold, and also our strategic planning has been on hold. So those are also on our goals. For the performance measures, we're really focusing on that main the main measurable of our total checkouts of physical materials and digital materials is a sign of activity at the library. We have right now gotten back up to our pre-pandemic total circulation, and we're hoping to continue the path we were on of growing that. We're also working on inclusion, diversity, and accessibility goals, and so we're measuring that with world language circulation and our National Edge Assessment, which is public-facing technology. And I can go on to the next page unless there's questions on this. No? Okay. All right, for the budget, as a reminder, we get most of our funds from Washington County and Cooperative Library Services. There are no FTE increases in this budget. It's basically a flat budget. We have some increases to personnel because of step increases, COLAs, and insurance. We have made some proactive reductions in materials and services to help compensate, and just some changes with the cost of things in the pandemic. We did not need to buy new self-checkouts for capital outlay. We rarely have to do that, so we just bought 2 new ones this current fiscal year, which are about to be installed. Any questions about budget?
Kind of goes to show what a lot of our big discussion last year was year after year, how the deficit just keeps increasing. You've made no personnel changes, and it's almost $100,000. I mean, it's just the standard personnel costs.
We have approximately 11 FTE in the library.
One quick question. In previous years, you showed that graph that showed, it'd be great to see that again, where we're at in terms of what we get from the county and what the city's funding on top of that, just to see where that trend's going.
Well, it's the department revenue.
But is it all, that's all county money?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
That's all county money. And so, yeah, it's just,
Yeah, but- and okay, I got you. I can do the math on it.
Council President Rosner, did you want that updated for this budget cycle? I mean, for these budget committees, or just in general?
I see it now. I can go in and do the math and graph it. I just like to see where the trend's going, because I know is it Washington County Library Services, WCLS? They, for everyone in the room, they elected to only give the cities, I think, a 3% increase on that budget and reserve some of that money for themselves at a much higher rate, 8%. So they basically ask all the cities to kind of eat that difference between the COLAs and stuff and the CPI and all that fun stuff that we have to deal with labor increases. So.
And ours did not decrease. It stayed at 3%, but to your point, they did have a higher amount. But yeah.
They gave themselves a higher amount, yes. So.
great work.
Good evening.
Evening.
Our goals are basically trying to get back on our feet here because we've been closed for 18 months, basically. So the number of people served, I'm trying to increase that in the 22-23 budget to about 16,500 in the field house. I think we're going to be somewhere around 13,000 this year. But we had 0 youth leagues this year, no interest, especially with the masks at that time of the year that we're still had to have masks on in there. So with that, we'd also like to increase the amount of leagues we have in the field house next year from 13 to 16. And then obviously Snyder Park, I'm increasing the hours every year there as far as rentals go, which will be promising when we have to replace that turf. So I think that's where all that money's going, isn't it? So that's working out pretty well.
How many more years do you think you have left in the life of that thing?
It's pretty new. Craig probably, I think,
We just moved it out.
what, 3 or 4 years ago?
Yeah, you can take off 2 years off the mass since it wasn't
Right.
Yeah, so we probably get another 8 out of it or better, maybe. So, and then the number of referrals for recreation opportunities, I get somewhere between 15 and 20 a year. I'm thinking with all the growth we're going to have in town this year with Brookman and things like that, I'll probably get 25 of those next year. That's mom and dad calling to say, hey, where do I sign up to play basketball? What do the adults do in town, you know, where are the pickleball courts, that kind of stuff.
Critical.
Yeah,
It's a-
yeah.
It's a critical answer.
Yeah.
It should be like on the, on the door of your.
Pickleball's real,
You play
real
pickleball, don't you?
I don't miss it. It's a daily ritual.
So you'll see here in the next slide that there's a, I don't know, which slide is this? Yeah, personal services, it looks like there's a 43.9% increase. That's not actually an increase, that's because we no longer have a contract with the district, so a lot of that time's been shifted over to the field house, and it'll be taken out of the next slide that you'll see for Parks and Recreation. And of course, COLAs also. Go ahead, David.
And Kristen and I have talked about maybe we should just collapse these down into one department versus, you know, we have the two
Makes sense.
separated out, but there's now limited activity in the one. And if things were to change in the future, we could always recreate it, but it's just more management of, you know, more admin management.
Tracking your time and.
Yeah.
See if anything happens, you know, with our partner in town with, who knows?
So I'm projecting about 106,000 in the field house next year, which is about a 60% increase, it says, from this year. David will be happy I'm already over that projected for 2022, so that'll be nice. Let's see, I can't remember which one to go. Gotta go down.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, so recreation and sports, I'm projecting about 70 for next year as far as field rental on Snyder. That may be a little low because I'm already over the projected for this year also, so you'll be happy about that again. And then you'll see the difference in the 38% decrease in personnel services on this slide because we're moving it over to the field house because I'm spending some more time over there now. We are really having some staffing issues. I've had a job posted since September, so 9 months, and it's a part-time on-call position. And so that's another one of our goals, is try to get somebody on so we can open some more hours at the field house. Dennis and I have both been working as many Saturdays as we can right now because we have Sherwood Youth Soccer in there. And I just don't have anybody to work the weekends. We've also kind of limited our rental times a little bit because of the expansion at Public Works with broadband. There's just zero parking in there until 5 o'clock at night. We used to start rentals at 3. We don't do that anymore because there's just no parking. And we've also lost the party room. I gave that to Craig so he could have some office space, so which is fine.
Not just for Craig.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's for Craig's.
It's for his
Greg's new office. You should
Yeah,
see it.
for Craig's department.
What, Craig has the party room?
Hiring people and he needs
Yeah.
people.
So the overall personnel services is only about a 5.1 increase, and that's obviously COLAs and all that kind of stuff, so.
Is at 3 o'clock, between 3 and 5, is there much parking available on Columbia?
No. Lincoln, you mean? It'd be Lincoln, yeah, Columbia.
Columbia in front of the, no, it's.
No, because most of those apartment complexes have 3 cars apiece, so. Yeah, there's not much there. And it's just, it starts to create havoc with the neighbors when we have too much going on there at, 4 o'clock and they're double parking in front of the neighbor's house, and then I have a neighbor over at the house.
Being a good neighbor.
I'm trying.
We should probably start thinking about a new public works building. Just an idea.
So I don't know if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but we're pretty standard. I cut down I cut materials and services by almost 2%. So a lot of that was referees, and then a lot of that is I just steal my copy paper from Craig, so.
I stole one of your party rooms. Well, you gave him your party room, so sounds like a fair trade.
There's gonna be some fee for that. You are fully utilizing the party room. You're charging Public Works for it.
I'm not charging them for it. I just gave it to them, basically.
That's a good idea,
guy.
I do have a question about the number of people served. Is that distinct individuals, or if I come in 5 times,
No,
I'm counted 5 times?
yeah, you'd be counted 5 times. So if you're playing if you're playing Wednesday night co-ed in there, you're gonna get counted 8 times per session.
How do we count that?
What I'll do is I'll go through and we have 8 teams, and I know that, team 1 has 15.
Okay, so it's just, okay, that makes sense.
Team 1 has 15, team 2 has 12, da-da-da, so I add that all up for the 8 weeks, that's kind of how I'm counting it up. Now, and I'll be honest with you, they're probably not exact,
You don't have somebody standing at the door with a clicker.
Yeah,
We don't need a turnstile.
because when we do a normal rental, I estimate that at 15 to 20 guys, depending on who the rental is. And like today, we had one before I got here that I think only 6 guys showed up. So they got the little pug goals out and they did their thing, So it's an estimate, but with the teams, it's a little easier because we know about how many players are on each roster for the most part.
It'd be interesting to see if we could figure out a way to figure out distinct users, right? Like 16,500, is that 1,000 people, 5,000 people, like individuals, right? Yeah.
That would be interesting. It would probably-
I don't want to go create a bunch of work, but.
It might do that, but it would be interesting to know. And that's people served as leagues, rentals. I have the Fireballs in there for probably 8 Sundays in the winter. They do a bunch of clinics and practices and stuff like that. We used to have baseball in there quite a little bit, but that kind of went with the other partnership for some reason. But yeah, that kind of thing is what's counted there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'm
You're
going
good?
to Eugene. I'll see you whenever.
Take care.
Drive safe.
Thank you, guys.
Hello. Hello. How's everyone doing?
Having a grab.
How do I put it forward?
Nope, you're good. It's up. Is that the first one?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And then it's just this arrow when we move forward.
That's the button. Thank you. All right. I did not budget for a party room, and I'm a little disappointed. But as you can see, our very first goal, our top goal for this next year is to explore upgrades to the building's equipment and sound, lights, and technology capabilities. It's been a really interesting couple of years at the Art Center, and we are actually busier than ever. I just compared our numbers. Yeah, I compared our numbers to pre-pandemic 2019, which was our last full year, and we already in May have 10 more rentals than we did the entire year. And so I'm anticipating us having a hugely busy back-to-back year again. Just an example, between Sunday, May 8th and Sunday, May 15th, we hosted 5 different dance groups, and 2 from Beaverton, 1 from Portland, 1 from Gladstone, and 1 from Tualatin. So that's just an example of a couple weeks ago, how busy we are at the Art Center. So that's one positive, and you can see with the performance measures down below, those hard numbers are shown there. And the main strategy, of course, is to increase participation and utilization of the Center for the Arts, because we have an amazing building, and it is a hidden gem for a lot of these groups that have been driving in from other towns.
Is 300 kind of the max, you think, the thing?
No, we can have 420 seated people in there.
I apologize, not from the personnel one thing, but number of days a year that the center.
Yeah, I mean, there's only 365, yeah. That's counting like Christmas Day and, New Year's Day.
But is 350 no problem?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Counselor.
Okay, I retract my statement. Doug has a new target.
Okay.
I'm thrilled with 300.
I mean, I'm thrilled with 300. It makes staffing a real challenge. But a lot of those are, like, we have some days that have 3 different events, or 2 different events. So number of days of usage does not necessarily equal the number of events.
Well, and there's peak days of the week, like everybody wants a Friday or a weekend. Like
Everyone
on
wants.
a Tuesday morning, right?
I mean, more people should want to on a Tuesday morning. We're very available. Any other questions about the numbers? It's been It's been exciting to see the numbers continue to climb. I feel that the projected were conservative, but there's a great need for people to come back to live venues and to engage in live performances again. We had 2 shows yesterday of a children's theater group, and they sold out both shows. So I think that's where we are right now.
With your hardware question, some of that, how are you gonna make it happen? Are you able to pursue the state art grants, or is it just gonna be general fund from revenue, or?
So to explore upgrades.
Right.
Yeah, so
Go to the next
let's go to the next slide. What a great question. So one thing that is not reflected in this slide is the SFOG grant that we received, which is the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant, which was a federal grant through the SBA, and we received $117,931. So that's not reflected in this revenue. Just know that a lot of things will be in next year's budget, showing that we've spent that on certain upgrades and improvements to the physical space.
Are some of those upgrades eligible to, I mean, using that money is great, but I'm a big fan of, again, other people's money. Is any of it eligible to ask for a state art grant that we might not otherwise be able to apply for? I'm just thinking out loud.
I mean, the SFOG was unique in that we could apply as a civic building.
Right? So there's that, but I mean, so you
Are you
have that,
saying leverage?
so that's that, but just as a standalone, I want a new speaker. Is there a state arts grant program? I mean, there is one, but are any of these things eligible?
Are there other grant opportunities?
Other grant
Yeah,
opportunities?
there are other grant opportunities. Yeah.
You know, keep some money in your hip pocket of what you got that, is flexible, and then go get, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah. And we do have a grant right now that we received from the county for Cultural Coalition of Washington County for a program that we're doing. So yeah, there are grants for programs and classes and trainings and all kinds of.
Leverage is good.
Yes.
Yes.
So when you're saying that 117,000 is not in here, but we will see next year the expenses spending that money, is that when we will see the revenue on the revenue side?
Tracked, the SFOG. Do you mind?
Yeah, no, part of the supplemental budget coming up, we'll have a recording of the money, but there's ways to make this happen, to where it can happen.
So it's not really going to be a 19% increase then, because we have those other funds.
What was that?
It's not actually going to be a 19% increase on material and services because of the SFOG dollars, which aren't in here.
Well, the asphalt dollars would be a revenue offsetting expense.
And the expenses for that SBOG are also not in here yet? Yes. Gotcha.
Either one.
So it's gonna eventually.
It's
it'll
gonna
even
wash,
out.
so these are true numbers, but yeah, you'll have your revenue overinflated, your expenditures overinflated, but at the end of the day, you're still gonna get the same number. So it's like the regular grant, it should zero out.
So I had a question. You mentioned, you went back and looked at pre-pandemic, which I'm assuming is 19.
Yeah.
And you said you've already done 10 more programs this year than you did that year.
Well, calendar year 2019, we had 45 rentals in our building. And this year, we're slated, we just booked 55 today. So that's not counting all the other rentals that may come in for.
So I was just curious, because your proposed is the same number as the adopted, roughly, as the adopted in 22. Are you just being really conservative? But if you're doing more business, I would expect that number to be higher, I guess.
Especially compared to FY '20 where it's down.
Right.
I tend to be a little conservative.
And on the personal services, which you were mentioning, or excuse me, the materials and services, that's kind of the same thing. Our costs will go up if we're paying contractors or instructors for classes, but then our revenue will also go up. So it does make it a little bit hard to predict how many students you're going to have in each class and what you're going to end up paying the instructors. But know that we won't spend all of that if we don't have the revenue to cover it. And I think we're also conservative on the revenue side. The other thing to mention is, I'm not sure, the rentals, not all rentals are created equal. You know, we have there was a big reduction, I believe, in how much they were using the Sunday programming for a while, the Sunday rental that we have over there in the church, and that had some impact. So some of them are one day and some of them are a week, and there's a big difference.
I just remember back in 2019 being so excited because you were approaching break even, which people
Right.
said could never be done with a public arts center. So I'm glad to see you're back on track. You know, COVID kind of caused a problem with that, but I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it is interesting that there's a lot of interest, even though this month we had one cancellation due to COVID still. So that's part of my conservative leaning, is knowing, we can have all these on the books, but, it's been a very fluid, odd few years. And what is interesting, though, is how many new rentals are coming our way, because other venues have been closed. People have discovered us. They've discovered that they actually like driving to Sherwood, and they've converted to art center users, which is fun.
Rental rates adjusted for times of use and days of week. So it's, if I rent on a Tuesday morning, it's the same price as your most popular time of the week.
Yeah.
Peak times.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a
It's
thought.
just-
I get there's complications to that too, because you don't want to drive away business, but.
You might also want to encourage them to maybe come to town.
I mean, there is
Do we not have
something
dynamic
different.
pricing?
Apparently not. That's why I just, yeah.
There is something on Friday, like you can't rent a Friday night, which is a hot commodity, unless you're performing Saturday. That's the only,
So you have to double, it's a 2-day minimum essentially, kind of.
I mean,
The
just
weekends,
don't take our Friday night, because someone will want the Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So we don't let someone just grab a Friday.
That's, in a way, that's dynamic pricing.
Yeah.
It's your guys' to run, but, filling those spots, the unpopular spots, like, Monday morning at 9 o'clock, some revenue is better than no revenue, right?
I was looking back at fiscal year 2020, and it might have been even the prior year where we were close, getting closer to breaking even, but that trajectory, of course, through COVID has changed. And then this year, that was like a deficit of 163,000. This year, projection deficit of 337. So it's sort of climbing again, but we're still climbing out of COVID. So I'm sure it's gonna. And again, it's the costs that we can't control: personnel, insurance, COLA. It's just.
I'll be interested to see what the actuals come in, because this does look, based on the metrics, the proposed revenue number doesn't seem to compute to me, but it sounded like you're saying very, very, you're being conservative, so. We'll hope the actuals come in high.
Looks good.
Thank you very much.
Almost. You're welcome to sit up here, though. You can join me. So the next section is events and volunteers. And this is another area where we've just been working on getting back to pre-pandemic numbers. We really had to obviously limit volunteer opportunities through the pandemic, and we're coming out of that. Of course, the senior center is our largest area that we have volunteers right now. We're now bringing them back into the library as well, with the library essentially being closed for, quite a long time. We didn't have volunteers in there. So those numbers are going to go up substantially. Music on the Green, last year we did, I believe, 2 concerts. This year we're doing 5. And pre-pandemic, we did 7. So we're working those numbers back up as well. And then that's what you're going to see, the impact on revenue. I'm hoping that we're going to bring more in for sponsors, but having less concerts, it's hard to charge the same amount for someone to be down there as a sponsor. And then also just trying to be considerate of
where businesses are at and what they can really afford to do. And we're just excited to be back down in the park and actually have activities and events again. And at the movies are coming back as well. Yep. So 3 movies, the first 3 Fridays in August. Materials and services, at the same time, the costs are going up. I mean, it's pretty consistent with where we were at. But of course, the cost of having the bands there, having the performers come down, that continues to rise. So we're also taking that into consideration. So until we can bring up that revenue, we're kind of holding steady. But any questions there?
I'm surprised to see a decrease in personnel services in a department. I see your note, but I'm not computing what that means.
So I think that I believe that some of that is how Tammy charges her time. So Tammy does charge her time based on what department she's helping out. So
like where she's finding volunteers for?
Yes, correct. So she might charge some of her time to police and some of it to the senior center, and if she's helping HR, Public Works a little bit, and then also just to general volunteer services or Adopt a Road. And then some of it may also be some of it would have been some of Leah's time as well for not having as many events last year or concerts, and then also our seasonals would charge their time there as well.
Yeah, so every year during the budget cycle, whether it's community development, community services, or public works, they give me all their staff and they say, okay, this is how I want them allocated across all these various departments. And so that allocation model can change depending on the needs. And so that's why in some of these allocation departments that even just moving around in between their own departments, you'll see a decrease, then an increase, and then you got, okay, let's look at the total overall increase for this department. Yeah. They didn't ask for any new FTE this year, except for, I don't want to take the thunder away from senior center.
Yeah,
that's coming up.
Which fair?
That's a halftime FTE. That's
Right.
all that is.
Any questions there? Okay, Maya.
So we're approaching 9 o'clock. Do we want to try and finish Community Services Division, or do we? Yeah, okay.
That'd be great.
All right. Then we'll call it. Okay.
All right. I'm your party closer this evening. We have lots of party rooms. Anybody can have a party room at the senior center. So we have our 22-23 goals continue to be increasing in our meal program, in our hybrid activity utilization, increasing our older adult mental health support services, and of course, the ever important increasing our community transportation options within the senior community. So these are all things that we're looking forward to accomplish this next fiscal year, and our budget's pretty exciting to support that. We are hoping to offer 85 programs a month in the 22-23 year, and we are at that for our June month, calendrical month, so we're off to a good start, so hopefully we'll actually be able to increase that. Our number of senior meals served. I was trying to look at our growth over the last 2 years to project what this is going to look like. And right now we stand at 12,305 meals served.
Wow.
So we're even growing exponentially faster than we were, even though we have reopened our center to in-person meal services, which we kind of thought might prove a little bit of a dip in our numbers. The numbers are staying strong, and we're still serving between 55 and 75 meals every day. So for those of you who might not know, our pre-pandemic numbers were more like 30. 25 to 30.
So does that include people that come to eat and meals that are delivered?
Correct. Yeah, it's the full thing, and it's about 50-50. Meals delivered to in-person. Our bigger days are obviously more in-person. Our capacity right now for in-person is 48 people in the building, and we have been meeting that, especially right before bingo.
You're still trying to keep them distanced, or is that all that room can hold?
Yeah, because we're doing 4 to a table right now.
Okay.
Yeah, we're doing four people to a 5-foot table. Yeah. So, and our number of attendees, we're also getting our programs back, and the attendees are coming up too. So from January to now, we're almost at 3,000 attendees for non-meal centered programs. So far so good at the senior center. Hopefully our budget story really
shows you that we're growing and we're very busy these days. So here's where we're at. In the past, we've talked about applying for funding, the Washington County Older Adult Nutrition Program funding. This year we were able to do that, and we were happily rewarded with that funding. So that has changed our pricing structure at the senior center, and we have, as you can see, a lot of income coming from that, which has really offset a lot of our costs. With that, you can see the next line down, our personnel services. We are asking for a part-time kitchen assistant because all of those meals, we need a lot of help making them. And I know a lot of you have seen the emails come up with us just screaming for help because we do want our volunteers to have a good experience and take the time off that they need. But we also constantly need help in the kitchen, and having an employee that is guaranteed to be there and help us with some kind of nuanced tasks to help prepare meals, get meals on the table, engage with the community, just like Dominic does, would be really beneficial. We're running past capacity right now, and this person is really going to bring us into being able to feed everybody who wants to come into the building. So it's really important there. Our materials and services, most of that is food, honestly. The food increase has really driven that up. On our line-by-line budget, a lot of that I brought down to try to counterbalance that as much as possible. But with more people to feed and the costs of food going up, it's just materials and service go up. So there's not a lot we can really do there. So that's us in a nutshell. What questions can I answer about how awesome we are?
Are we raised? Sorry, go ahead.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
One, is a part-time staff enough? And two, what is your outlook or feeling about finding somebody to fill that position?
I think part-time is enough because we have a crux time that we need somebody there, and that's a 4-hour time period. We would take another hour per day if possible to have a 5-hour block instead of a 4-hour block with that person, because that helps us prep for the next day and everything. And for a good food service job that's in the middle of the day, I'm really optimistic that we'll be able to find somebody who's able to accomplish that, who's interested and would fit in with our community. And I have some of our volunteers even that have asked if this will be happening and might they be able to apply for that. So we might be able to continue to engage the community that way, which would be wonderful. Yeah.
Sounds like a good kind of a job for like a mom who has kids in school even, or a dad who has kids in school and has that.
Yeah. We're a great place for that.
Certainly, meals are free for those that can't afford it. You ask for a payment for those that can afford it. If you're of a certain age, you have to pay for it. Are you seeing, I don't want to know the numbers per se, but is the percentages of kind of staying consistent with, on the revenue side from just a percentage of meals served, you're still averaging a certain percentage that you get partially paid?
I projected that we would have about $10,000 a year in donated income from those requested donations, from the meal donations.
Has that changed in the last?
It has, yes. Yeah, it has dropped down with the augmentation from the funding.
One of the requirements of receiving the funding is we have to make it very clear that it's a donation.
Yes.
And we're not charging for a meal unless we're younger, but we have to make sure that that's really clear, and that's part of the conditions of taking the money. But
yeah,
overall, obviously, we're in a much better shape than we were last year, having the funding come in.
Is that something that's can be re-upped year after year? Is this a one-time?
Yeah, so we are funded through June 2023, or July 1st, end of June. And there would be an open process for reapplication before the beginning of the next cycle, which we would engage in.
I know that you've only asked for it and you explained it. Before my schedule changed, I spent time in there, and I spent a lot, and I know that volunteers are hard, and I see Tammy's emails as well too. Like a lot of us can't answer like maybe we did so much in COVID, et cetera. I see it. I've seen a need there, and I don't know why. With all due respect, that's like 2.5 people, and I would look at it approaching it. So I just throw that out there. I would support something like that. No, it's not going to happen, but I've seen it. See the need there at the senior center to have, and I understand that time period too as well.
Yeah.
10 to 2.
The busy time, yep, 10 to 2, yeah. And we love having our team of volunteers in there too, and this is not gonna replace them.
No.
This is gonna just
No.
kind of help augment and make everybody's
No, but
experience easier.
as this shows right here,
Yeah.
and as some of us, and I'm not the only person here to have personally witnessed how that business is running, I don't know,
Yeah.
just throwing that out there.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your time. Everybody who comes and helps us deliver and stuff at a drop of the hat, I really appreciate all of you who do that. Thank you. And some people's moms who do that too. Any other questions?
Great job.
All right, thank you. 9:03, not too bad. Okay.
This next one will be very quick. This is just community services management. And there's no significant changes, real small budget for materials and services, and it's mainly personal services. And it's just the catch-all for everything else that occurs.
Just the generic bucket of stuff.
That's right.
You spend 10 minutes explaining to me the $600 drop in materials and services.
Critical to know.
That's all I have. Yep, that is it. Sorry, Craig.
Before we adjourn, is there anything the committee felt like they did not have that I could prepare tomorrow, just because this is kind of my first in-person, like, actually budget committee meeting with this committee, where if someone didn't get a packet or would like to have a packet or something in front of them, is there anything that you felt?
I didn't get it back.
Okay, I'll bring you one.
I think the packets are helpful because that's just too hard to read.
I thought it would be better, so thinking, oh, that's a big screen, yeah, it'll be fine, yeah.
Yeah, it's
hard.
just, we're old eyes, some
I'd
of us.
like one too. I've struggled all night, looking up there, so.
I even had LASIK surgery.
I've been going,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
struggling here, I'm struggling there.
I'm sorry.
Well, I enjoyed my packet, so you'll enjoy it next time.
And your eyes aren't gonna be strained like mine all night doing that either.
It was a well
People
done
sit better than
package.
I know.
Are we
Thank you, David.
adjourning?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, too.
All right, so I will convene this meeting and we'll reconvene tomorrow.
So before we do that, everybody, who is attending tomorrow?
I cannot attend.
You're able,
I have to check with the boss. I might have,
Guys all-
I might have to be remote. I mean, I'll be here, I might have to be remote.
Okay.
What about our remote people?
Thumbs up from Sean.
Nancy? We need one more.
Lana's not gonna be here tomorrow.
This is Nancy and I'll be there,
Okay.
remote.
So if, were you?
I'm in for sure, it's just whether I'm in person or remote. is
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll have at least 9.
Okay.
Pretty thin.
Those questions. It's not a good thing, it's not a bad thing either.
I won't be here, that'll save you a good hour.
Yeah.
But the
definitely.
public's not gonna know what's going on.
Yeah, we won't get for the benefit of the folks at home.
Are we adjourned?
Yes. Meeting adjourned.